I've had these Necromunda tiles sitting around for ages because I always thought it would be a really big job to paint them up. I'll show you how I painted one up to a standard that I'm really happy with in less than an evening. With Necromunda tiles you usually get like a rust-caked look where it looks textured and gritty and you just can't see any of the floor because it's just all rusty. And while that's a great look, I've seen a lot of cool boards like that, I wanted to go in a different direction. I used the airbrush for speed, but you could just as easily use a big brush or even a big dry brush, that would work just as well. These tiles are pretty detailed, but the best thing about painting terrain is you can put as little or as much effort in as you want. If you don't want to pick out every detail, that's fine. If you do want to pick out every detail and highlight and shade everything, that's also fine. I tend to go for a kind of middle of the road approach. I will pick out most of the detail, but I'll rely on washes quite heavily. Just keep in mind when you're painting terrain, it doesn't have to be Golden Demon standard, you just have to get it painted and it will look fantastic. After priming with black, I sprayed the inside of each square with Secret Weapon Tire Black. It's a very similar colour to Dark Reaper, so you could use that instead. I wanted a dark perimeter around each square, so after I put down the Tire Black, I did a little highlight in the middle of each square with rubber, which is also Secret Weapon miniatures. If you're using a dry brush and you're using Citadel paint, probably Thunderhawk Blue would be the closest match. If you are using a dry brush, you want to dry brush very lightly in a circular motion. Very few things in this world look as good as well done hazard stripes, especially on Necromunda terrain, so I had to add some. I've always tried to freehand hazard stripes in the past, and very surprisingly they've never come out as crisp as I want, so since I had the airbrush out anyway, I thought I would try to make them the best gosh darned hazard stripes that I'd ever done. So masking tape was the order of the day, a lot of masking tape. I masked the area that I wanted the stripes on and sprayed it with Everland Sunset. I'd done a test and the stripes looked sharp, but they looked a bit too clean, so I grabbed some snakebite leather, plopped it in the airbrush, just completely neat, I didn't use any thinner or water, and I sprayed around the edge of the yellow boxes. This gave a nice brown gradient and it made them look a wee bit dirty. It was exactly the effect I was looking for. They don't look like much yet, but trust me, they will look great. This is one of the best things about doing these tiles. I had no plan going in, I didn't know what I was going to do for weathering or anything like that, and I just made it up on the fly. And it seemed to come out really well, and it was so much fun. After I had my yellow boxes, which could be painted in as well, you could use the masking tape and just paint over the top of it. I used more masking tape to make diagonal stripes. To make sure the stripes were a consistent width, I didn't just do every second stripe. I laid masking tape right next to each other all the way down. After that I removed every second strip. I know this method wastes a bit of tape, but I wasn't bothered about that. I just know that if I'd eyeballed them, I wouldn't have been anywhere near as happy with the width of them. So I'm really happy I did it this way. Once I was happy with how the tape was laid out, I sprayed Corvus Black over all the yellow stripes. The next part is very important. You must peel all the tape off in one go. It doesn't actually affect anything, it's just really fun and really satisfying. And that's the tale of how I did my best ever hazard stripes. But we're not done yet. This next bit is really time consuming, and I actually had an argument with myself over the best way to do it. I'm going to paint the trim on all the tiles lead belcher. This could have maybe been made a wee bit easier by painting the whole tile lead belcher and filling in each square with the tire black, but I personally thought that would be more time consuming. In the end I decided to just buckle in and paint all the metal trim lead belcher, and I'm really glad I did it this way. It was actually very relaxing and it only took me about 45 minutes for the full tile, which isn't too bad. I found the easiest way to do it was to turn the tile regularly and just let the brush do the work. I never tried to get the brush into any places that I wasn't sure it was going to hit the raised edge, so I didn't get too many misplaced brush strokes, which was great because it saves a lot on cleaning up time. It is quite a lot of work, but I think it's worth it in the end. I also took time to paint any hatches or grates or drains at this point, so just paint them in lead belcher as well. You might have noticed that I had a bit of yellow overspray onto some of the other squares at this point, and it was actually a very easy fix. I just got my big dry brush and put tire black on it and just dry brushed in a circular motion over all the tiles that had overspray on them. After that I did the same with rubber, and then over every single square, whether they had overspray in them or not, I dry brushed rubber highlight, which was a lighter colour. If you're looking for the Citadel equivalent of rubber highlight, it's probably Thunderhawk Blue and Fenrisian Grey mixed together 50-50. It should get you pretty close anyway. The next bit was the best bit. This was when I took all different colours of shades. I took Athonian Camo Shade, Nuln Oil and Agrax Earth Shade, and just randomly washed all the metal bits across the entire tile. I'd put a little bit of green over here, a little bit of Agrax over here, a little bit of Nuln Oil here, and sometimes I'd even mix the two, so it'd be like Agrax and Athonian Camo Shade. I just did this across the entire tile, making sure none of it was uniform. I didn't want any two bits looking the same, so completely randomly, sometimes thicker, sometimes thinner, just across the whole tile, all the metal bits. The big circular grates are fantastic to just slap a whole load of different washes on. You could maybe put a bit of brown round the edges, a bit of green in the middle, so that you could imagine like sludgy water going through and a wee bit of the sediment being captured in the grate, a wee bit of black round the other side. Just go to town on it, just random, do your best, put the wash anywhere you like. This adds a lot of interest to the metal, but it doesn't go overboard. I tried one of the new contrast paints, Garagax Sewer. It's kind of a brown metallic-y colour, so I used that over some of the pipes and it came out looking really good, almost like Warp Block Bronze. I used it quite sparingly, but it was a really good find. I was really nervous about the next bit. It had the potential to knock the paint job up a notch or completely ruin it. I'll leave it to you to decide which one it managed. I put a whole load of Troll Slayer Orange on my palette and then chucked a whole load of water on top of it until it was just slightly painty orange water. I then painted it into random nooks and crannies all around the tile. The important thing here, just like the washes, is to randomise it. You don't want to do like an orange line over every single nook and cranny. You just want to make it as random as possible. So I just chose areas where I thought rust might build up. Some areas I did a lot more rust, some areas didn't have very much at all. So I was very careful not to put two similar tiles next to each other because you just want it to look completely random. You don't want it to look like someone's decided that there's going to be rust there. If you think any bits are too bright, just pop some Agrax Earthshade over the top of it and it'll dull it right down. As with most things miniature paintery, the more time you take over this, the better it'll look. At this point I realised I hadn't painted the little metal straps all across the board, so I painted them Sycorax Bronze with Lead Belcher painting the little knuckly bits. In reality, I could have just painted the whole thing Lead Belcher for all the differentiation it gave me. You don't really notice the difference once it's got a wash on it. So after I painted them, I slapped some Agrax Earthshade on them, and that was it. And that's how I painted my Necromunda tile. If you're looking for something else to watch, I'd highly recommend this one. Thanks for watching. Cheers.